Hello, and thank you for joining me for today's Criterion Learning Series presentation. I am Steve Tompkins, Principal Solutions Architect with Criterion, and today I'm going to be showing you ESS widgets and calendars in Criterion. So let's go ahead and get started. And while I switch over to my browser here, I do want to, of course, mention that we have support people to answer questions for you. If you have any questions that come up while you're watching and you want to ask those questions, you feel free to post messages using the chat or the Q&A, and we'll be happy to answer those questions. And of course, if we cannot answer them due to time during the webinar, we'll follow up with you to make sure those get answered for you. So let's go ahead and switch over here. It should be showing my browser, I believe. There we go. All right, so we're going to be talking about ESS today. So of course, I'm going to start off in ESS, and we're talking about the ESS widgets and calendars. And you're probably familiar with this if you've used self-service at all. You've seen this widgets, unless you have them all turned off. You've seen them before. So what you can see on mine, of course, I have pretty much every widget turned on. Now, there's a couple that are not visible that I don't see because, for example, I don't have an active survey and I've completed my onboarding and I don't have any policies to sign. So there's actually 3 widgets that are hidden for me right now that only show when there's actually something to do for those particular tasks. So you'll notice here, I'm just going to quickly go over them. We'll talk about it and I'll show you where to actually set those up in the system. So we're going to start over on the top left. So it's just a picture of who I am out here. So I'm Ted. There's my picture right there. I can click here to add a new picture, to change my picture if I need to. You'll see here also the job title and the employer that I'm in. If I have earned any badges, if you're using that functionality, they would show right here, as well as if you have the employee check-in turned on, that would show over here in this widget. So there's some options to show that, and I'll try to cover that when we get to the settings there. The tasks. Now, this is, again, one of those things where if I have tasks, I will see them here. Of course, if I had completed all of my tasks, all my approvals, etc., I wouldn't see this. But I have 2 things I need to complete, which are these 2 forms. One of them is an approval. One is I need to actually do the form. So you can see those right here. Of course, I can click on them to do that task. Now, you may notice here I can open and close that. I can do that same thing with a widget if I want to. It doesn't turn it off, it just minimizes it. Here is my time off. So I have 2 different time off plans. This is one of those ones where I can click on the widget header and actually get to the time off screen if I don't want to go to the menu for my time off. So I can click on the header here and it will take me over there. All right, external links. So this is if you're using links in the system, you publish out some links, you can have those show here for employees to be able to go to those particular links. There might be a website, it could be a document or something like that. All right, the feed. Now, of course, I have a feed here with some information about today and a little image there, so you can use this to, have messaging to employees. Mine, I've got a couple of groups set up, one that goes to all users, but you can narrow this down if you want to go to different groups of users. We've had a webinar on this in the past where we talked about how this actually works and setting up the groups and the communities for this. So that's what this widget is here in the middle. And then on the right, as I mentioned, there could be a survey widget, which would actually be right up here above feedback, where you can complete a survey. It's been sent to you. I don't have an outstanding one, so it's not showing there. Feedback. So feedback is something where you may want to give or request feedback of employees. And so I can minimize that, of course, but I can also do the give feedback and request feedback for my employees there. So go out here, select the employee, and then the question and their answer. Did they do well? Do they need to improve something? So that's what the feedback is all about. Requesting feedback would be, I would like some feedback on myself. So I might go out there and send a request to a colleague or somebody who reports to me. Notifications, of course, this isn't the only place where notifications are visible, but within self-service, you may need to know about something. There's a new post in your feed. There's a birthday, an anniversary. There's something you need to do as far as a task. Maybe your request for time off was approved. All those types of things would be notifications. Now, this is one of those things that doesn't just stay here, email and text messaging. as well as in the mobile app, you'll see these notifications. So this is not the only place for them. When you're interacting with notifications, you can click on the little icon here to the left of the date to clear it out, to say basically I've read this notification. So maybe you've sent a birthday card off to this person, so you can check that off. And of course, it'll clear this off. It shows the 5 of them at a time. I obviously have many to clear out, so I have to spend some time. But I can go to different pages and stuff like that. All right, the attendance widget. So this is where I can see my attendance for the current month. So obviously we're in March, and I can see my attendance here. This is another one where I can interact and go to my timesheet by clicking on the header. And I don't have a timesheet for this period, but that's how that can work there to get into my timesheet if I need to. Upcoming time off request. So if I had an outstanding one, I would be able to see it out there. When I click on the header, it takes me to the time off screen, similar to clicking on the header over here, it takes me to time offs. And there's one more that might show up under here, but pay. So this is my last pay date. Obviously, I haven't been paid in a while, but you can see there. And again, I can click on this to bring up my last pay stub for that particular one that's out there. All right, so that'll do that there. And of course, then I'm on the pay screen and I can click on a pay stub to see that information there. So that's there. And there is one more I forgot to mention. I don't have any events currently in the future. So the events widget would be right here. So that's a quick overview of the actual widgets that are out there. Let's talk about where they're actually set up and put into the system and turned on if you want to have them turned on. So in that situation, I need to go to my settings. And I'll come over here. Under system configuration, you will see ESS widgets. Let me just show you right there, ESS widgets. All right, now this is an employer setting. So if you have multiple employers, you may have different settings for different ones. And you'll see these right here. So very easy to turn them on or off if I don't need the feed. I'm not using that as an example. I can uncheck that box, or maybe external links or something like that. Just turn it off. And then as soon as I hit save, it's going to disable that widget the next time somebody refreshes that screen or logs in. This one right here is, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, in the chat here, is deprecated. The info box doesn't do anything right now. What that would do is actually, it's kind of above here. There's an info box that could show stuff. We don't use that right now for anything, but that's what the info box is. I always just leave it turned off. But that's how you enable them. This is a per employer setting, so I don't have the ability to say, well, only my hourly folks, for example, would see the attendance widget. It's going to be an all or nothing by the employer. All right, so that's the ESS widgets right there. Now, some of the things that you may need to set up in the widgets to get them to show, as an example, events. I would need to set up an event or to show the widget for that, and that's going to be under HR administration. So I could put events out there for this year. Might say, 2025. Just call it 2025 all the way across the board for this group of employees. And I would have various groups. Let's just say all active employees. And then I could put the events for this particular year. And I might say, oh, we're going to have a company picnic on the 30th of May. That's going to enable that widget for event details. So this has to be in the future. If you have some events that were last month or something, it's not going to show that widget empty. It'll show that widget once I have something in there. And the same type of thing will happen with surveys, company policies, and onboarding. So here now is the events widget. So you can see how that is enabled. So if you have a widget enabled, but you're not seeing it, it's because there's nothing to show. So rather than showing a blank widget, we just hide it until there actually is something to show. So don't be terribly worried if something's not showing for you. It's just because there is nothing to show, and so we hide that widget. All right, so those are our widgets that are currently available in self-service and how you can enable them and things like that within self-service. So let's look at calendars in self-service. Now, this is one where the employees have a little bit of flexibility in what they want to show. Now, I do have some calendars configured, and they're available to see under this calendar menu right here, and you can see these are set up. So when I go to holidays as an example, oh, I don't have any company holidays. Let me go to my own and team time off. So this will allow me to see the time offs for employees that either my own or for people that are in my team. And so I can see this calendar. Now I don't have any time off there, but there's an example right there. So we had a birth date on that, and you'll see that right there. Now, how do you set these up? You'll see other ones here. How do you set them up on the self-service side is right here. Right, and you'll see calendar under your settings. And you'll see this one here. Now, let me click into the one I was just looking at, my own and team time offs. So we can go into the configuration. Now, I will talk about the calendar policy in a moment, which enables what the employee can see in a particular calendar or calendars. But the name can be whatever you like to call it. So my own and team time offs, that's the name you saw in the menu. You can call anything you like. All right, here's the content type, and these are the various calendars that I have access to be able to see here. All right, team birthdays, team work anniversaries, things like that. So I can choose to add whatever I like. In my situation here, I'm filtering by an employee group, and I can set one or more groups that I want to be able to see right here. So this might be a situation where you're saying, I want to see team time offs. If you're saying employee group and you don't have a group selected, or you've selected a group where there's nobody in it with time off, that might be why it's not showing. So this is where you could go into a little bit of troubleshooting. If something is not showing, you're expecting it to. Check your settings for how you're filtering. And then if you are doing groups, make sure you have that group in there. If you do my team, you'll notice the group goes away. It's going to be the people who are reporting to this person. Org structure 1, if I'm not mistaken, is which we're going to be using here as far as my team. All right, is this going to be my default calendar? And do I want to enable iCalendar? And do I want to show partial days off as a all day off? So I can do that there. So once I do those settings there, now this is where that iCalendar is going to reside. I can easily copy this and then go into my Outlook or on my phone or into Google Calendar or wherever you might be using your calendars. And this is the link to the calendar, and then it can show in that system. So if you want it to be on your phone, as an example, copy this link, and then you subscribe to this calendar in that application. I'm not going to cover how to do that, but I'm sure there's videos out on YouTube and so forth to find out how do you subscribe to a calendar on your device. Right, but you do want to make sure this is enabled in order to subscribe to it. It has to be enabled. All right, so as an example here, this holidays one, it's not enabled. That's why there's no link there. Okay, so that's how you can set these up, and you can create as many as you like. You could have, one for time off, a separate one for anniversaries, another one for birthdays or whatever. So I can keep them separate if I wanted to. And then, of course, when I come back over here, it's going to show that information. All right, so that's the functionality of how it works in self-service. How do you go through some of the calendar policies and what's available for the employees to actually subscribe to? That's going to be under your calendar policies here. So if I search for calendar, you'll see under system configuration, we have calendar policies. So this does need to be configured if you want to set a policy for what people can see on their calendars. So I'm going to show you how this one is currently working here. So the name of it, you can call it whatever you like, of course. So, in my example here, I did subordinates only. And this is the group that it applies to. So if you wanted to get granular and say, this is what's for the accounting group, and this is what's for the operations group, and, et cetera, you set up those different groups, you can have several policies out here for different groups of employees. And of course, what that means is if somebody is in multiple groups, they may have multiple policies that apply to them. If you did hourly employees and you did operations, if somebody's in both, they may have different options available for that particular group that they're in. So maybe under hourly employees, you don't have the team birthdays and so forth. You may have other types of calendars like events and holidays. but for their department, maybe you have the team information. All right, the org structure. So this is, and this is where I knew there was a setting for this, and I said it was org structure one. Actually, this is where you set the org structure that's going to show when they do team, and I'm saying these are my subordinates. So manager, supervisor, those are my two that I have set up. You may have one, anywhere from 1 to 4. So you would see them listed here. You can only select one at a time. So this would determine back in the settings when I'm saying my org structure, the manager is going to use a manager org structure on the employee. All right, now when I'm looking at time off, there's a couple of things you may want to show on the calendar here. So this only applies, of course, to time off. There's no reason and balance, let's say, for birthdays or holidays. So, it's not going to affect that, but it will for the time off. So the reason for time off can be shown to the user who's looking at the calendar for these people. So let's just go this. Peers would be, let's say we all report to the same manager. All of us, if I check that off, would be able to see the reason. So if I chose vacation as the reason, my colleague, who we both report to the same manager, would see on that team time off calendar, if they are using it, the reason vacation. Rather than just seeing that I'm off, it would say that I was off for vacation or sick leave or whatever the reason was for that. So if you do not want to show that, you could just leave this unchecked for peers. Subordinates would mean, okay, my manager can see the reason for my time off if he has that team time off calendar. And then supervisor would mean I can see my supervisor's reason for time off if that's what I'm doing. So I can see that. So you can, do these things as appropriate. Check those off. All right. And then the balances. Not sure why you'd want to be able to show you the peers your balances, but you could if you wanted to check that off on there. So the same ideas for peers, subordinates, and supervisors, but this is the time off balance. I don't think you'd want to show that to peers, and I don't think you want to show that to, you don't want to show the employees the manager's balance. So you probably want to just use subordinates in this one, but it's certainly, you can say maybe you're an open company and everybody can see everybody's things. Certainly you could check those off. All right, and then a feature that we added relatively recently, I want to say it was last year in July in the 24.2 release, is, of course, the calendar type we could set here and say, okay, this applies to this type of calendar. But we have now filtering available for when we choose team right here. So that's going to get to when we go to the setup over there. There's going to be some settings here for filtering. That only applies if you've selected one of these team ones. You'll notice how it goes away. Like if I just do holidays, there's no filtering. All right, so that's what that is for there. So that's what is available only for teams. So if you don't see that there, it's because you haven't selected one of the team calendars. It'll show up there. That doesn't mean that this is going to apply to company holidays if I check this. It just means it's going to apply to these team ones on there. So that's how that works there. And it'll only apply to those team ones. And of course I can have maybe different ones. Maybe for team birthdays and anniversaries I want to have filtering. I could create a separate policy for team time offs where I don't have filtering. All right, so that's how that would work there. So yeah, that's how you could set these up. And like I mentioned, you may want to have different policies for different types of calendars. Like, company holidays, maybe you set it up and all employees can see the company holiday ones. You don't worry about the, reason and stuff like that. So you might have a separate policy for all employees for company holidays, but company holidays. But when you go to each individual department or something like that, you may have different ones out there. All right, and I should have mentioned it from the beginning. This is an employer setting, so I could have different settings for my other employers if I need to. All right, so that's going to affect what shows up over there. Now, you may notice I have these 3 calendars here. When I come back over to this and I go to calendar, that's going to affect those calendars that I can see right here. So I'm in that group called all employees. these are the 3 calendars I can see, because back on that policy, I said those are the 3 calendars I saved and I came back in. But that's what's showing up right here because that's what I said. I would need to save this and refresh just to have it add those. So if I wanted to say all of them as an example, and now I save, when I come back over here and I refresh, then I would see it. So if you're, again, doing a little troubleshooting, you're saying, I'm not seeing the calendar I'm expecting, I don't see my time off, that's because the calendar policy is in effect for you. And, whatever that is, you might only have certain ones enabled. So that can affect what you see here, right? So that you see how that works right there. Okay, and then you may notice here, the filter for groups only shows up when I select those team ones, because that is a setting back over on the policy. So you can kind of see how they work together there. If I have the allow calendar filtering, that shows up right here when I select the team stuff, where I can say my team or employee group. All right, so hopefully that kind of makes sense how it's all tied together there with the policies. And as I mentioned, there might be multiple policies that apply to you. So, just be aware of that when you're coming in here or somebody reports to you, I'm not able to see something, or how can I subscribe to the team birthday calendar? I don't see it there. Well, check your policies and make sure that you have one for them. The groups are correct. The groups, in case you're curious, mine, I have a pretty generic one here called all employees. So when I go to my employee groups, you'll see this one here. This is just all my active employees. So I just said, the formula is true. That's all active employees. But I do have some that are static. So let's say this Jackie and Ozzy one, that was a policy there. I'd want to make sure that the employee who's reporting the problem is in that group. And I could do that looking at the group, adding in manually, or looking on the employee themselves. So maybe Frederick here calls up and says, I can't see the birthdays. You can come into your groups here, and you might see that the group that he is in, or that should be able to see birthdays, is he's not in it. So if you use that group, is that Jackie and Ozzy is the one who can see birthdays, I would need to go and add that employee. So you can do this from either side. You can do this on the group, or you can do this on the employee, but that's how you make sure they're in the group, is come here. If you don't see the little trash can, that means it's a dynamic group that they are added to because of a formula. Going to a little overtime here to talk about groups, but just so you can see here, like hourly, I have a formula in here that says assignment detail is salary is not true. So that's why he's in that one, because he's not a salaried employee. So again, if you're saying, why is he not in the salary group? I thought he was salaried. Well, you can't change the group if it's dynamic, but you can go and fix, his position information. Perhaps this should be salaried, and for whatever reason it's not checked. You'd want to, fix that situation, maybe double check that he should be salaried, and check this off by clicking edit and doing that. So when I do this, I don't have a workflow there, so it should update my group. See there, he's in salary now. All right, so just some of the things you can go through troubleshooting. Of course, if you still are having a question on this, you might have to reach out to support and say, Frederick can't see this, calendar, he's in the right group, and, things like that. And we can, of course, help you out with that. But you just give you some tools to work with if you ever get people reporting an issue to you of where you can check. It's what we would do if you were to call in. So, this is how I want to give you some, tools to work with on how to look for those things in your settings. All right. And then, of course, make sure the widget is turned on for those different things too. If you're not seeing something, back to the ESS widgets, if you're not seeing something, if the person's saying, I don't see my, attendance, well, make sure that it is enabled right here. So that's something that you can also take a look at. All right. So I think that hopefully covers this. As some people say, hopefully we're done and dusted here with this ESS widgets and calendars. The only thing I can't really cover, because it is very program specific or device specific, is subscribing to the calendars. So that one I would recommend, searching for that with your favorite search engine, there's probably videos out there on how to add a calendar to your Android phone or iPhone, or Outlook or whatever. It's usually very simple to be able to add a calendar feed or a subscribed calendar. Sometimes might be the terminology you need to look at. All right, let me just double check. I don't know if there was any Q&A or chat that came in. I don't see anything, so hopefully any questions were answered if they were asked. And let's go ahead and look at our upcoming schedule so we can let you go a little bit early today. All right, so here you can see the upcoming schedule of events that are happening. And we're going to cover something that we covered a couple of years ago, but I want to make sure that we talk about these things. So employee management. Now, obviously, that could be something I spend all day on, but I want to go over some of the kind of the basic things, including mass hires and mass terminations, so we can be kind of clear on how that stuff works. And we'll talk briefly about hiring and terminating individuals and leave of absence and stuff like that. So kind of think about the stuff from the main employee screen in HR. We see the list of employees. That's where we're talking about that, because obviously there's many screens where we can, talk about updating demographics or whatever. We're not going to go into all that detail, but we'll talk about employee management and some of the HR basics in the system. And then April 24th, we're going to go ahead and cover deductions. Again, this is a topic that we cover every once in a while just to keep it refreshed on some of the new things and how to set these up. Perhaps you missed the last one. So covering deductions and how those are set up. And then we're going to cover a topic that we've never covered before, because we have a lot of enhancements coming here, and that is scheduling. So we'll show off the scheduling that's going to be available. Well, it's available now, but greatly enhanced after our next update is out, and we're going to continue enhancing it. But I want to get at least kind of a level set on scheduling and how that works in the system. And so that is May 8th. And as I mentioned, we do have an update coming out. The webinar is going to be in April. So keep your eyes out for the release notes and the webinar scheduling, and hopefully you can join us for that one. It's not before this next release or this next webinar on the 10th. It's going to be somewhere around the 24th. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head, but somewhere around there is when our 25.1 will be released, and they have a bunch of fantastic new features that are going to be available for you. So thank you for your attendance today. If you have any questions that came up about today's topics or other topics that are top of mind, please reach out to us, help@criterionhcm.com, and happy to answer those questions for you. And otherwise, I will see you all again in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much.